Hey everyone, and welcome! Are you ready to boost your vocabulary? In this explainer, we are going to get into 25 super useful English words, which is going to be a big help, especially if you're studying for a test. We're going to break them all down so they're really easy to remember. So let's get started. Now, to make learning these words as easy as possible, we've split them up into 4 simple groups. First up, we'll cover words about communication. After that, we'll get into words for some really strong feelings, and then powerful words of action. We'll wrap things up with some great words you can use to describe people and situations. All right, let's dive into our very first group, words of communication. These are all about the different ways we use language to connect, from quick, clever chats all the way to sharp, angry comebacks. So here we have 2 words about replies. First is repartee. Think of this as a fun, verbal tennis match between friends. It's that quick, clever, back-and-forth conversation that's just fun to listen to. You could say, their repartee was so entertaining. Now, a retort is also a reply, but it's got a totally different feeling. It's a sharp, quick comeback, maybe because someone criticized you. For example, if someone says, you're late, your retort might be, well, you're not exactly early, are you? It's a little bit defensive. Okay, let's look at 2 very different ways we talk about things. To rhapsodize is to talk about something with just so much excitement and passion. You absolutely love it and you can't stop praising it. You might hear someone say, she began to rhapsodize about her trip to Italy. On the flip side, we have sarcasm. Sarcasm is when you say the exact opposite of what you actually feel, and your tone of voice is the big clue. So if you trip and fall and say, that was smooth, yeah, that's sarcasm. You couldn't find 2 words that are more opposite. A reprimand is a serious, formal scolding. Think of a boss telling an employee they made a big mistake. It's not a good thing to get. For example, the manager issued a reprimand for breaking company rules. A salutation, on the other hand, is just a simple greeting. Hello, good morning, or Dear Dr. Jones at the beginning of an email. Those are all salutations. Now let's switch gears from how we talk to how we feel. This next group is all about words of strong feelings. These are for those really intense emotions that we all experience. This pair is a perfect example of cause and effect. Repugnant is the adjective. It describes the thing that is totally disgusting or horrible. For example, the smell of the rotten food was repugnant. So what feeling does that cause? Revulsion. Revulsion is the noun. It's that intense feeling of disgust. So you could say, he was filled with revulsion at the repugnant sight. See? One causes the other. Here we have 2 more opposites. To revel means to party, to celebrate, to have an absolutely amazing time in a very lively, maybe noisy way. You could say, the team reveled in their victory. Now, the complete opposite of reveling is repose. Repose is a state of total peace, quiet, and rest. You might see a cat sleeping in the sun and think, look at that perfect state of repose. This is an interesting one, an active feeling versus a passive one. To repress is an action. It means you're actively pushing down a feeling or memory. You're trying not to feel it. For example, she tried to repress her feelings of sadness. Resignation, on the other hand, is a more passive state. It's when you accept a bad situation because you know you just can't change it. You've given up. You might say, with a sigh of resignation, he agreed to work late again. Okay, on to our third section. Powerful words of action. As you can guess, these are mostly verbs, doing words, and they describe actions that have a really strong impact. Watch out for these 2. They sound almost the same, but mean very different things. To rend is simple and violent. It means to tear something into pieces. A strong wind could rend a flag. Easy enough. But render? Wow! This word does a lot of jobs. It can mean to provide a service, like render assistance. It can also mean to cause something to be in a certain state, like the shock rendered him speechless. And it can even mean to translate. It's a very useful, flexible word. This is a fantastic comparison. Copy versus improve. To replicate something is to make an exact copy, a duplicate. Scientists might try to replicate an experiment to check the results. But to revamp is to take something that already exists and make it better, newer, or more modern. You might revamp an old website to give it a fresh look. Both of these words are tied to conflict. A rout is a complete and total defeat. We're not just talking about losing, we're talking about getting absolutely crushed. For example, the visiting team suffered a rout, losing by 50 points. A reprisal, however, is an act of revenge. It's when one side attacks back in response to being attacked. It's an act of retaliation. Let's look at 2 final action words. Resurrection means bringing something back that was gone. It could be literally bringing someone back to life, or more commonly, bringing an old idea or style back into popularity. You could talk about the resurrection of 90s fashion. Now, rivet is interesting. Its literal meaning is to fasten with metal pins, but you'll almost always see it used to mean holding someone's attention completely. A great movie can rivet you to your seat. Your attention is fixed and you can't look away. And that brings us to our final section, words to describe things. These are fantastic words that will help you add a lot more detail and color when you're describing people, places, and ideas. Okay, pay close attention here, because one is a person and the other is a type of humor. A reprobate is a noun. It's a person who is just morally bad with no principles, a real scoundrel. You might say, he was a lazy reprobate who refused to work. Ribald, on the other hand, is an adjective. It describes language or humor that's a bit rude or vulgar, often in a comical way. You might hear about a comedian known for his ribald jokes. Here are 2 great descriptive words. Resplendent is such a beautiful word. It means shining, dazzling, and gorgeous. You'd say a queen in her gown and jewels looks resplendent. Now, rife also means full of something, but it's almost always something negative. A city could be rife with crime, or a company could be rife with rumors. You wouldn't say a garden is rife with flowers. It implies there's too much of a bad thing. This is a really common and useful word. Retrospect just means looking back and thinking about the past. And you'll almost always hear it used in the phrase in retrospect. It's the perfect way to start a sentence when you realize something now that you didn't realize before. For example, in retrospect, I should have studied harder for that exam. And that's our list of 25 fantastic words. But you know, the most important part of learning new words is actually using them. So here's a little challenge for you. Pick one word from today's list, just one, and try to use it in your own sentence. That's honestly the best way to make sure it sticks in your brain. Thanks so much for joining me today.